Hi. Hi, good. How are you?
So there's a whole bunch of things. Like they don't our town limits the size of speed bumps. They don't want to limit the speed bump size. But the reason they don't is because their new overlay is has a 25% lot coverage ratio. And that's inclusive of both the primary house and the some more space. So they're saying we don't really need to have a limit of the square feet because we're going to limit it by the percentage of the lot, which is lower than what ours is. Ours is like 40% or whatever. So there's certain things that are just different. And the Phillips community in Hamlin don't want to do exactly what the 10 miles is. It's going to be similar, but they want their opportunity to have their own area. So it takes time to work through these things. So, but it's interesting because one of the things that Liz said at the meeting was, well, it's taking so long. We can do this probably the next couple months for 10 mile, but the other things are part of the limit. And she said, well, deny annexations in these places until you have the protection. We don't deal with annexation. The council does. They have to run until they do it. Because the only reason these people are to get around impulse with the county,
Emily, have you met Corey Barber?
I don't believe so.
He's our neighbor. It was, if he does show, I think it'd be your nice guy.
You should be. Oh, I forgot about Corey. You could actually move over one if you wanted. If you want to. It doesn't matter.
Does Corey like?
I don't think it matters. I just realized that I forgot that Corey was sitting on the end, but
I'm happy to move over. You guys tell
it
me.
does not matter. And you have seniority, so you were here first. You get to sit wherever you want.
Anyways, he's a neighbor. I forgot what street he's on, but he's definitely like Fort Fairmont.
Wait, what's his last name?
Barber. Yeah.
I think your mic's perfect.
He just built a brand new house.
Ready? Sure. Okay. All right, we'll call to order the meeting of the Planning Commission for February 18th. Chairperson Bennett is trying to get back here from Columbia and is going to be late, so I will chair the meeting and hopefully he will arrive before the end. We have 6 people, so we have a quorum. And I know Mr. Barry's not going to be here. Mr. Farrar may be a little late. We'll see. But we can move forward. So first thing is to approve the agenda. We need a motion and a second.
I move to approve it.
Okay. Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Okay, approving the minutes of last month's meeting. Again, we need a motion for that, or are there any changes or comments?
I'll make the motion again.
Okay, motion made.
Mr. Davis, I need your microphone on.
I make the motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Great, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thanks. Mr. Stone, any update on what the recommendations were?
I've got 4 slides to go through, so we'll work through as quickly as I can. But
No problem.
these are last month items that we reviewed, and they were all for first reading. The 1651 Highway 41, Planning Commission recommended denial. It was in the Phillips community, ultimately council deferred. 3759 Highway 17, the CRO zoning for what they're proposing as a campground was approved for first reading. Also had the May Lane rezoning from AB1 to R2. That was approved. And the 7 parcels on Old Georgetown and Children's Road, those were approved for annexation and CC zoning. Then we had the property on the corner of White Flat and Bowman Road, the request for R3 that was deferred by the applicant. Also had an ordinance for R1 to R2 rezoning on 1520 Rifle Range Road. That was denied, and even though that was first reading, that denial will terminate the application. And then we had the Dunes West Plan Development amendment for 43 multiplex units. That was deferred back to Planning Committee, and March 2nd, Planning Committee will be reviewing that. So now we've got final readings. These are items we reviewed a couple months ago. And we have the 3305 North Highway 17. The bank that was zoned R1 was approved to be rezoned to AB1. The ordinance for AB1 to R2 for a single family home at 1306 Erkman Drive, that was approved. We had 1490 Boston Grill Road, that was approved for annexation and CC zoning. And then the 1602 Rifle Range Road, that was a request for R3 zoning, that was denied, and it was annexed in as R1. And finally, we have the text amendment for BAR and accessory use and structures, and that was approved with modifications, and I've listed some of those modifications here for your reference. So if you have any questions, staff is glad to entertain those.
Anybody have any questions or? Okay, if not, thank you very much. I didn't see any correspondence as of today, so I'm assuming that none came in within the time frame. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so the next is general public comment. If you're here for a specific item that's on the agenda, items 7A through D have public hearings. So you could choose to speak during the general comment now, or you could wait until the item that you're interested in comes up. And whenever you do come up for either situation, please give your name and address, and you'd have 2.5 minutes to speak. So is there anybody that wants to make general public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the general public comment period. And we'll move on to business, which is the first public hearing and the first issue is Indigo Square PD amendment request. Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is our 1.1 acre parcel that we'll be reviewing tonight. It's in the Indigo Square PD, and it's currently owned by Olive Branch AME Church. You can see here that it's nearly fronting on Highway 17 and abuts the Wando East Townhomes. A lot of y'all may remember this from 2023. This was a rezoning and PD amendment request that came before you. Olive Branch owned this entire property and still owns this entire property. The goal was to essentially rezone their church property to PI1, which is appropriate for the comp plan and future land use, and enter this property into the Indigo Square PD. And in that process, Commission and ultimately Council provided 3 conditions to go along with this PD amendment. The first was a 15-foot buffer abutting the Wando East Townhomes. The second condition was for a 4,000 square foot max size on building. And the third was to limit the uses to OP and NC office professional neighborhood commercial. And within these uses, it's a diverse mixture of uses that provides for general commercial, but what is not entailed in those uses would be drive-through, and that is something that they are currently requesting, and that really is the summation of this current PD amendment request before you, to add drive-through use to just this property, not universally throughout the PD, but just on this property. And I have more information, but would like to get your initial feedback, and if you have questions, we can dive into deeper on certain topics.
Okay, does anybody have questions for Mr. Stone before we move? I have anybody? I can't see. Okay. I have one question. Would this automatically require a traffic study to have a drive-through?
Correct. Our transportation department's adopted some new guidelines that certain uses will trigger a traffic study, and this will.
Okay, so it wouldn't require a condition added if we approved it. It would just be an automatic.
Automatic.
Okay, thanks. Is the applicant here? Does the applicant want to speak?
Good evening. My name is Walter Smalls. I live at 1248 Bracy Court, Mount Pleasant, 29466. And I am the trustee pro tem at Olive Branch AME Church. Been there almost forever. But we are requesting your support to, we've been trying to lease this for 2.5 years. And we're looking for another revenue source to help support the church. And this is definitely in our strategic financial plan to do that. And we're requesting your support to approve that. And please vote in affirmative.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
So I'm just kind of curious, when you talk about
Yes, one question for you.
when you talk about a drive-through, I mean, what type of restaurant are you thinking about?
We have it being advertised through Avison Young, and it may be a coffee shop. We receive interest from a coffee shop. Matter of fact, I had a list here: brew coffee shop, quick restaurant, wag bar, because I don't know what that is, and
But you're not talking about McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or something like that, or are you?
Once the requirements come in, is out advertising, and then we'll look as a church body and say, yeah, nay, these are the type of things that we want on that site. So nothing is firmed up yet. It's just advertising out right now.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't think so, but we'll call you back up if we need to. Okay, this is a public hearing, so anyone that's here for public comment on this issue, feel free to come up, name and address in 2.5 minutes. The sun is in, right?
Good afternoon. My name is John McQueen. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees.
And your address?
I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. My name is John McQueen.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Okay, we're interested in enhancing our opportunities to lease the property, and most of what needs to be done, most of the business now incorporate drive-ins. As just to change the way people live and shop and whatnot. It will give us a chance to maybe get moving on the moving the property forward to get at least. Right now, it's kind of stagnated based on that. Most of the younger people, they prefer both ways, walking in and the drive-in is something that they use, and sometimes they don't even want to wait for the drive-in. So I think that would enhance our capabilities to move forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public comment period. So discussion, thoughts, questions.
Well, there's nobody here. There's nobody here from the adjacent property, so apparently nobody has much of an objection to it.
Mhm.
So I mean, that's all I can say about that.
Yeah. Anybody else? I mean, my own feeling is that as long as there's a traffic study that would be triggered by this and done, that's the important part, I think, just so that because this is a very busy entrance that goes in not only to the apartment complex, but also the rest of the commercial. So we just want to make sure that it doesn't back up into the street or anything. But if that's covered by a traffic study, I mean, I think that's a perfectly reasonable, and again, it would be limited just to this one parcel. It would not be the rest of the PD. It seems like a reasonable request. Yeah. Anybody want to make a motion to approve then, or any other questions?
I'll make that motion to approve.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Nope. It's approved. Thank you. Okay, item B is Sweetgrass Homeowners Association request to amend its PD. Mr. Stone, if you could tee this one up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is another PD amendment that the Commission saw back in 2022, but I still want to give some context just at the community level. This is Sweetgrass neighborhood on the corner of IP Connector and Rifle Range, and you can see toward the very rear of the property, there's a 6-acre site that is our subject parcel we'll be talking about. Taking it down to the neighborhood level, this does abut the Hidden Lakes HOA space and also the townhomes to the rear and the hotel. And this is our subject parcel here. I guess the reason this came in 2022 was for the parcel outlined in red, and the PD that was defined in 1989 specifically said you are permitted to have a boat storage area of 87 by 150, and it was oddly specific, but that was what it required, and that was the only thing it could be. So Commission and ultimately Council voted to just create a boat storage area, not giving it defined parameters other than the plat that was submitted with it. So now our request that is before us is to look more comprehensively at this entire 6-acre site, and the HOA would like to add amenity facility uses. So swimming pool, tennis courts, clubhouse, picnic areas, boat storage, all rather than just seeing it as a singular amenity, opening up to what other amenity uses would the HOA like to see on the site. I guess the question that could be asked is, where would this go? Because this did not come with this is a request for these uses to be added to the PD. It's not a conceptual plan. But as we kind of look at the site, I mean, we call it a 6-acre site, but there's 2.5 acres of detention area. High ground is 3.5 acres, but a lot of those are more isolated and access is questionable. So you could see, this is a 1.65 acre area here where you would probably see a lot of these uses being developed. So the one thing that I would want to mention is that the future land use for this property is not uniform throughout. You can see along this larger portion that's conservation open space and this area that has the boat storage, that was designated as conservation recreation open space. So a little bit of a differing future land use, almost the same shade of the same category, but there is some slight differentiation there that I wanted to bring to your attention. So that is the request that's before you, and staff's glad to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Stone before we?
What about all the trees? I mean, I guess a tree survey that was done, or are these, old trees, or what kind of trees are they?
It's a mix. A tree survey was provided on this parcel. I do not have a tree survey for the remainder of the site, so that will be incumbent on them to provide that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Is the applicant here wanting to speak? Come right up. Name, address.
Hey, good evening. I'm Elliot Hood, 1934 Oak Tree Lane, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, 29464. I'm the HOA president for the neighborhood. Just a little history here. As Peter mentioned, we brought this forward in 2022. The original intent was to just expand our boat yard, just move the fence a little bit, put some gravel down, and get some bigger spots for our neighbors. We discovered that with that, we didn't have any setback from some of the adjacent properties that are in our neighborhood. So we saw that we would have to provide a 25-foot setback at a minimum to those properties if we even touched or modified that space. That opened up the door for us as the board of directors to look at, well, now we've got access to the rest of the property if we are going to go ahead and move that boatyard. So we thought we would like to investigate what it would take to potentially use that space. We have no other amenities in the neighborhood other than the boatyard, which only has 30 spots. So it really only provides a minimum amenity for just some boat owners. And we really want to provide something more for the neighborhood. We've got a lot of young families, a lot of kids running around in the street. So we just want to get them off the street, and we want to give them somewhere to play potentially. Again, this is really all in the early stages of discovery. So we really just want to understand the feasibility of this space. We've come with this as being really what we've determined as the first step is can we change or can we amend this PD to be more than a boatyard? Otherwise, then we would be wasting effort and time and resources looking into this further. Any kind of amenity takes effort, it takes utilities, it takes all sorts of work from our time. We're all volunteers. So we just wanted to make sure that we could amend this PD. Now, we've been talking about this for many years in our neighborhood. We have discussed it amongst our Facebook and our annual meetings. We conducted a survey of our neighbors. We got about 130 responses out of 253 homes. We had 88% of our neighbors, so 114 of those respondents were in favor of an amenity. We had 16 that just didn't want to see any kind of amenity. We factored in some costs that could potentially come along with it. So there was some research done on the survey to make sure that when people were voting in favor of something, they knew what the cost was associated with it and what was coming with that amenity. So we've done a lot of due diligence, and this is we've come to the point where we don't want to move along any further with spending money on feasibility and resources before we can amend this PD to reflect, I think, what the zoning already enables us to do is it R3? Okay. So I just think, I think we just want to make sure that we're following the right process and the right steps before we proceed.
So I have one question. How long ago was the Facebook survey, and are all of your homeowners on Facebook?
Yeah, that's one of the problems we have with communication is we have Facebook. We have not all of our homeowners on Facebook, and we have generally struggled to get response and communication with all of our neighbors, even via mail. We're collecting emails, Facebook. We kind of have we've been working towards being better about making sure we have everyone accounted for. This was more of a sample size for us and a significant sample size of all homeowners to say that this indicated that there was very much an interest and that we wanted to investigate it further. And that's all we're doing. So we're not saying we're going to do this. There's a lot of things we obviously have to get the financial approval from all of our homeowners to pay for this. That'll be a huge hill for us. But even if it's something we've got a lot of interest in a walking trail or a playground, just a way to use this space and enable the kids to go play somewhere is, at a minimum what we're looking for.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Who owns the space? Is it owned by a private corporation or owned by the HOA?
It's owned by the HOA.
Okay.
Okay, well, we may call you back. That's
Okay.
for now.
Sure.
Okay, we have a public hearing, so there's a public comment period. So anybody that wants to come up and speak, please do name, address, in 2.5 minutes. And if there are multiple people, if you could just kind of, move towards the aisle, just if there's time, just to save time. Go right ahead.
Hi. I'm Pam Leonard, 1838 Falling Creek Circle, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, 29464. My home is this area that the HOA wants to develop into amenities is right behind my house. And my backyard already floods because when Centex built the homes, they built into a berm, so all the property behind our homes is raised. Without those trees to absorb the water, I will have much more flooding. I have to replace my fence more because of the flooding more often. The neighborhood has an 8-foot fence around the front people's that border the streets, but we don't have one in the back. I think that we will have increased problems because of the flooding. And so I am vehemently against this proposal.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Linda Toth, 1887 Falling Creek Circle. My concerns are this is a wildlife habitat as it is right now. I walk my dog back there every day. You have hawks, ducks, geese, birds, all nesting in this area. And I'm sure there's other wildlife that I don't see, but I just happen to notice the birds. IOP put a sign up, I don't know, about a year ago that now makes Hungry Neck. They have it. You want to go to 526? You go down Hungry Neck Boulevard. The noise level has increased greatly. Again, I'm not in the same area as Pam is. She's right against this fence. I am back on the other side of Falling Creek Circle. We have a car wash down there right now that is very, very loud noise-wise. 7 a.m., that car wash goes, you hear it. I'm an outdoor person. I'm not a person that sits in my house. And you can hear this every day, just going and going and going. So I think the noise is an issue. The buffer zone area is an issue. Flooding mitigation. If you're coming in and putting in a building, you are now putting in hardscape. There is less drainage for hardscape. These nutrients and things will not be absorbed into the environment. And again, it is a raised area, so there is flooding that does come into the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Holly Giles Reagan, 1842 Falling Creek Circle. I'm also against this change. Our community did not vote to bring this before the board, as you heard before. This is still exploratory from what we've been told. But this piece of land does have some history. That big pond that's there now was not there before. It was all wooded. And a previous HOA board years ago gave it up to become a pond so that townhome development there could be built. They needed a drainage solution. And the person on the board in the little corner here that's not part of this PD had a little pond that they wanted widened, and they made that deal without consulting us at all. So we lost a lot of trees already. So I'm concerned a lot about the trees. And as you notice that, what Linda said, there's a lot of noise now. We can hear Hungry Neck, we can hear IOP, we can hear the car wash, which runs constantly in the summer. And these trees that remain are the only buffer we have between us and those areas. Lastly, there is a lot of wildlife back there. We've had deer, we have raccoons, we have possums. My kids like to fish in the pond, which is great. They can go back there and just walk around. So, being passive and enjoying the wildlife is really what we would like to use this space for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jessica Majinski. I live at 1834 Falling Creek Circle. I'm a neighbor of Pam and Holly's, and I'm just here to voice my opposition to this motion for all of the reasons previously stated.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stan Sutton, 1886 Falling Creek Circle, Mount Pleasant, 29464. I just want to come up and just support the board's efforts to try to get this changed so that they can expand the boatyard. And in the future, if anything comes along, put an amenity back there.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Claudia McNeil. I'm at 1307 Horseshoe Bend, which is a little bit removed from that area. I understand the need to expand the boatyard, but I think if you're going to do that, because that's the original stuff that's been presented, then you need to also follow the buffer zone that's required. I don't see how taking the pond away in a recreational area benefits anybody. I do understand that rezoning may be necessary in order to put a walking trail back there, but I don't think you can put the amenities back there without destroying what we already have there as far as the wildlife area and the buffer that we need in between Hungry Neck with all the businesses that are there. There are times when there are groups that play at some of the bars on the other side of Hungry Neck that we in the neighborhood get to hear it whether we want to or not. So if you take that buffer zone away, then we're going to be hearing everything that happens over in town center and anything coming off of Hungry Neck without a buffer. So I know we need to do some things to increase the recreation, but I'm not a boat owner, but I still have to pay to maintain that boatyard. And for me, that's what this originally started out, was as an expansion of the boatyard, not putting in a bunch of amenities that we're going to take away from what we have back there as a wildlife area. Thank you.
Thank you.
God, I'm short.
You can pull it down.
Amy Ratner, 1307 Horseshoe Bend, 29464. I'm here to support that, and also just mention that there would be more people here had the sign not gone up at the back of the neighborhood last night. So if you want to talk about people getting involved, then let everybody know. Put it in the front of the neighborhood. Put it in both spots. Give us some time. I mean, I walk the neighborhood multiple times a day, so I know what's going on. And that sign was not there at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. So just to bring that up, there would be more people here on both sides. Had everybody in the neighborhood had an opportunity to know about it. And a no.
You're opposed. Thank you. Okay. Yep.
Hi, my name's Gina Nelson, and I live at 1850 Falling Creek Circle. And so my house is like kind of in the middle. My backyard is beautiful. It's like has all these beautiful trees. I see ducks swimming in the pond. There's kids fishing. And there's so many birds. Like my backyard, my husband and I have become like bird watchers. Like there's owls, there's hawks like you can see in the trees, and nests, and my backyard now, we have a pesky little mockingbird that's scaring everything else away, but we have cardinals and finches and doves and I don't know. And so I don't want to look out my backyard and now see kids that I don't know swimming in a pool or, besides the noise, I don't want the unpleasant view of it. Not to say that that's an unpleasant view, but, I love just looking out there in the nature. It's quiet, it's peaceful. It's why we purchased the house. We moved from out of state 3 years ago, and, we've worked on our backyard. I don't have kids anymore. I, choose to do things, for my husband and I who are now retired. So that's it. So yeah, besides this being beautiful and I worry about where all the wildlife will be, I also don't want the commotion right in my backyard. So
thank you. Oops. Right on the button.
Hello.
Hi.
My name's Ashley Pelletier, 1312 Old Mill Lane, Mount Pleasant, 29464. I'm here to support the PD amendment. If you look at the PD that was written in 1989, 1990, it is only the boatyard. In 1990, there were only 30,000 people in Mount Pleasant. It is now 2026, well over 90,000 people live here. This allows us to change with the times. I hear the concerns about the wildlife. This PD as written doesn't even allow us to have a trail to walk those lands, to look at the wildlife. Children play in the neighborhood. Yes, they are loud. We could have children play in this area without a trail, without an amendment to the PD, it would still be loud. The amendment to the PD does not take that away. What it does is it allows us an opportunity to expand and to grow. Not everything is going to fit in those 1.65 acres. What we're asking is for the opportunity to explore what could be there. But we need the PD amended to even do that. It would be hard to get consensus on anything that requires an actual change to this land. However, amending the PD is not a commitment to amending the land. It is just saying we have an opportunity to see what we could put back here. Not that we are doing anything right this second. But if we don't amend it, we have no idea what's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Discussion? Questions, comments?
I have just one question. I actually went back there on Saturday and parked and looked at the path, I would call it, to get back to the boatyard. Would you say it's 8 feet wide? I'm not sure if it's wider than that. I don't know how a car could get back there very easily, although cars are towing the boats. I'm just thinking if there were a swimming pool back there, I don't know how anyone could get up that road very easily and park. That little, I'll call it a path, is quite close to the house immediately to the right. The house, well, sorry, to the left. The house to the right is a little bit further removed. But is it an 8-foot path? And would the path have to be widened?
There's a 20-foot. This is the dimensions right here. That's 20 feet.
Yeah, the paved part, Peter.
It is
the
the
paved part. 8 feet.
It'd be.
It seems very narrow to me to get a boat.
It would.
Or
it would
a
have
car
to be,
back there.
It would have to be widened.
It would have to be widened. Okay.
Yeah. You want to speak?
I move to deny. I'll just make a motion to deny.
Okay. Do we have a second? We can continue to discuss after the
Okay.
motion.
All right.
So
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. So let's continue the discussion. I do want to say before we have other people discuss that I did get several phone calls from people who could not attend the meeting because they didn't know about the sign until last night. And one of the calls was from the house immediately to the left of the access. and she was vehemently opposed to it. So my concern is that, without the buy-in of the people who would be most directly affected, that's one concern that I have. The other, the trees.
The trees,
and the wildlife.
the retention
So-
pond, stormwater mitigation. Of course,
Right.
I've been on the tree task force, so I've been doing a lot of research on
Right.
wildlife habitats and this, and that's retention pond is substantial, and it is holding
Speak up just a
water.
little
The
more. Yeah.
retention pond is substantial, and it's holding water for it looks like at least 2 neighborhoods. I agree with the homeowner that was their concern was their backyard is already having issues. If you remove those trees in that, you're creating a much bigger issue than there already is.
Any other
I mean,
comments?
like some of the people are saying, there's a lot of opposition to it, but it's the neighborhood's land. That if they want to do something to it, like they're going to have a hard time even getting approval to do that. Like I just don't know if giving them no options is that fair.
Yeah, I would agree with that point of view. Is that right now they don't really have.
Yeah, I'm talking to the mic, so that people
Sorry.
can hear.
That right now they don't really have any option except the boat area. And is this maybe us getting too involved in what they can and cannot do? Because right now it's just the option.
Well,
I would think that some of the other rules that we've had put in place with tree protection and setbacks and everything would help kind of mitigate some of the concerns over the trees, but who knows what they'll even put back there. Could just be a walking path and very few trees get.
And to play devil's advocate, we do not know what their covenants say because they could have their covenants could have further restrictions on what they can do. They probably likely need a supermajority to even do anything
I mean,
with that piece of property.
It just seems to me this is putting the cart before the horse. If you have a full, you could call a meeting like we have. My HOA just had our annual meeting. People would have the opportunity. You'd get adequate notice. You'd have an opportunity to come and be heard, and then they could have a true vote. Having a Facebook survey with people that might not be on Facebook, having a sign go up at the last minute, which I think might have not been in compliance with our sign requirements, in terms of the amount of notice given. I really do feel as if getting opposition from so many people on Falling Creek Circle indicates that there would be opposition. And the PD amendment the PD may not allow walking trails. I don't know that for sure, but what they're being asked to amend is to allow anything and everything that's in type of an amenity. Tennis courts, pool, they could, do the entire thing. Whether they get a vote to, or whether they impose a special assessment on people is up to the HOA. And I don't know what their rules are, but it seems to me that they're asking for a lot before they've got full buy-in from enough. And also, this PD never allowed for those things. So the people who bought the homes all along Falling Creek Circle that abut that, that wildlife area, did so, I would imagine, with the expectation that that was going to be there, not that they were going to be 20 feet away from a neighborhood pool or tennis courts. And as somebody who lives in an HOA, my house is directly in front of our neighborhood pool. I do have some buffer, but my side of my yard is the access way, just like that house would have the access way there. And it is a very big change. Now, I bought the house knowing that was there. But when you buy a house and then something changes, it's a very different story, in my opinion. So that's why my vote would be to deny. Any other comments or?
I mean, should it be deferred so that it can be posted properly? It sounds like it wasn't even.
So I do want to clarify for the record that all minimum notice requirements were met. So for state code, it's 24 hours before the meeting, and that is, if the commission has any concern about whether the public was not notified enough for other reasons, you may defer it. And public comment or public hearing has been closed, so it would have to be re-advertised. That would be up to y'all, and it would come back next month.
Did you?
And
does
if
the
it's
town-
denied, I'm sorry, if it's denied, what is the opportunity to come back? Is it,
It would have to be a substantially new plan.
okay, and that could be a new plan.
I mean, there's no plan right now.
Yeah.
Basically.
I'm sorry?
So there's basically no plan right now.
I kind of said conceptually a substantially new request.
New
Right.
request.
And they did say that they had, I guess, 180 something neighbors polled out of 2 something. So
I mean, my impression is
So,
it would be hard for them.
we've had a number of residents come forth with comments, and frankly, I'm very sensitive to those comments. I think we had one resident in favor of it, but the majority of the residents that are here are opposed to it. And so, you know, I think you pretty much know where I stand. So I don't have anything else to say except for, I mean, when we have a vote, I'm going to deny it.
Well, let's at least vote on the motion that's on the floor with a second.
Mr. Barber, did you have another comment?
No, that's all right.
Sorry?
No.
I was just asking if Mr. Barber he was going to say something.
Oh, another,
if he had
before we
anything.
have a vote. I didn't know if you wanted to amend or,
I would
right.
just
So we have
one comment about like the deferment, just
I'm sorry?
brainstorming about the deferment. Like, would that 30 days be enough time for the HOA to have their own meeting prior to coming back before us?
Well, and I think if they come back, they can come back with a substantial change. The substantial change would be to modify what they're asking for and maybe have something more specific as opposed to just kind of leaving it completely open-ended with everything and anything.
Can they rescind their application on their own at any point? Like, if they don't want us to make a decision, can he pull this application now?
They are able to, if the applicant so choose, they may remove their application. That would prevent them from submitting this request for a year. But again, if it's a substantially new request, maybe if they came back with saying, we're going to limit these uses to this select square footage or this acreage, that would change the nature of the request and be enough for them to come back.
Because right now it's for the whole 6 acres, correct? It's not just for this
these-
1.65.
Anything that's buildable.
These uses would be conferred on the whole 6-acre property.
Well, and I think you mentioned that not to put the cart before the horse of they wanted to explore what they can even do, but before they can use resources to go down that path, they want to know if it's even approved to do that. But perhaps if they did a little bit more due diligence within the neighborhood and came to a consensus and got fewer items approved and more parameters around it, that might be the best path forward for the applicant.
Okay, let's take a vote. We might need a roll call, but let's try first. All those in favor of denying the application for the PD amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those against the denial?
Opposed.
No? Okay, so it's 4-2, so the denial passes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who's opposed?
That would be me.
And Ms. Mensah?
I was for.
She was
You're
for
in
the
favor.
denial.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's a vote of 4-2.
Thank you.
Next item will be presented by our town engineer, Kevin Mitchell.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. We have before you a public hearing, correct here? It is a public hearing for the amendment and changing of a zoning requirement that currently exempts the density being applied to subdivisions that are greater than or less than 1 acre. So this is a result of a number of months. And I think most of y'all were in attendance. I believe Mr. Barber, Ms. Sanford may have come in on the tail end of this, but we were discussing last year the requests that have been coming before the board and the requests of subdivisions that will continue for the foreseeable future and Mount Pleasant being smaller requests instead of the larger subdivision request. And some options were presented at a couple of meetings, and by vote of planning commission, this was one of the things that was decided upon, that a ordinance be created to eliminate that 1 acre threshold. So very simply, it is struck through. That's 156.025. B is struck through in its entirety and is proposed to be replaced with, for the purposes of lot subdivision and development, density is applicable to all parcels of land, regardless of the parcel size. Calculation of maximum density is specified in 156.16.16. So just as simple as that. And then here's just a quick example of what we're talking about when it comes to calculating density. So that will also be added to chapter 156, and that is the public hearing. Now, the next item, just for clarity, is a LDR change, which will go to town council for a public hearing there, but it's also included as the next item about the access, which we'll get into after the public hearing is closed and the vote's taken. So
Okay.
I'm here to answer any questions on this.
Okay. Any questions before we just call the public hearing?
Yeah, I just have a quick question on the, like, because these are smaller parcels, like you're going to get decimal points like this.
Mhm.
Is it always rounded down to the whole number? Or if you're at like 299, you don't round up to 3?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a hard threshold right there. So if you don't meet the density, then you don't have the qualifications for the extra lot. Good question.
Okay. So I guess we can just have the public hearing for this one and then do a public hearing for the next one, or do you want to combine them? One's going
Well,
on to council.
the next one
and
is
one's
chapter 155, which would go to town
separate.
council. So
Right.
I guess the next one would be more of like a public notice.
Okay.
And this would be the actual official public hearing for 156.
Okay. So let's do this one, public
Yeah.
hearing. If there's anybody to speak one way or the other about this.
Could you bring up the language? And my name is Robert Adams. I live at 35 East Lake Road in Mount Pleasant. And what I have is a question, and it says, for the purposes of lot subdivision and development, density is applicable to all parcels of land, regardless of parcel size. I live in a community that actually is subject to a PUD, and the developer has built 761 homes, and he has an allowance limit of 762 homes. And there's approximately 3.5 acres left over. My question is, would this change where there is a PUD give the developer the opportunity to put in an unlimited amount of homes? And bearing in mind that our community has 2 ways to drive in and out, you'd be putting a lot more homes with no additional ways to get in and out. So thank you.
Okay. And I'll ask the question of Mr. Stone, since we can't talk with the public, but just before that, is there anybody else for a public hearing? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Stone, when there's a PD, that's what governs the number of units, not the density otherwise.
That's correct.
In a PD such as Ion, that would cover you. Okay. Any discussion?
Very
on
good answer, Peter. Good job, Ms. Chairman.
Is there, I had one more question.
Sorry, yeah.
With all the different zonings and minimum lot sizes, like, we're not messing up like a minimum lot size can't support a dwelling unit now. Like, any lot, this is only for subdivisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
That's correct. That is correct.
Okay. So it's pretty straightforward. We talked about, I mean, we basically were in favor of having you move forward with this. So, I mean, I'm comfortable with it. Unless we have other questions, we just need a motion to approve and a second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Great.
Go ahead.
It'll go to town council for 2 readings for that one. So
Perfect.
be the next step. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Now this is the land development regulations, the proposal, which is running the same kind of the same point of discussion that we had with the density. This is new standards for access by way of easement. On December 10th, this slide was presented to Planning Commission. They settled on items 1 and 3 to be drafted for an ordinance to a potential change to the land development regulations. Item 1 was the prohibiting the easement area to be included in the minimum lot calculation for that lot that's burdened with the easement. And also number 3, which was to change the building setback measurement from the actual property line to the easement line, which restores and protects that yard standard for that home site. So we moved forward with the ordinance here, and then this is what's proposed. Just striking through currently what's already in place and replacing it with flag lots and lots proposed to be created with access from a public right-of-way via adjacent property must be granted a waiver by the Planning Commission. Following conditions shall be applicable to meet zoning requirements. And that's A, minimum lot area standards as per the zoning standards are not intended to be for the portion of the lot used accessing the proposed lot. Yard standards are to be upheld to protect the character and intent of the zoning designation. Therefore, areas of the access easement on the burden lot not sharing the benefit of the easement shall be excluded from the minimum lot area zoning standards if a waiver is granted. And then the second part of that is B, minimum yard standards for single-family lots shall not be adversely impacted by the easement benefiting others. Yard areas are for the enjoyment of the homeowner and should be preserved for the use of the homeowner. Therefore, vehicular access must be separated from the yard area. Building setbacks shall be measured from the easement boundary line when the easement width exceeds minimum zoning setbacks for all subdivision requests granted a waiver. So we're not removing the waiver from this. We're just saying if you do have a waiver and you're granted the waiver, these are the conditions that have to be applied to the subdivision. I also added this exhibit we used in the past to kind of demonstrate a previous request that came through. As you can see, the setbacks of the building are right up against the easement. And so that would be actually measured from the hatch areas where the building setback would be. And then lots 1 and 2 would actually have to have the square foot area outside of the easement be met to be in compliance with the zoning. So hopefully I created that fairly clear, but
Just can you go back to the text for a second?
Yes, ma'am.
It's kind of heavy, so I just sort of make sure I'm understanding it.
It's okay.
So what if we have a situation in which we have an already existing flag lot and then they want to separate and subdivide into another so that they would both be using that access, but then they'd have to go from one lot to the next, like a back lot. Is that covered in this, or is that, what would be the conditions?
Well, the way that I would read this, and I didn't have that in my mind when I was crafting this, but I think the way I would interpret this is they would have to still be requesting a waiver for the creation of a subdivision of a flag lot, because you got an existing flag lot and you're creating essentially another
flag lot using the same access.
That is
to
correct.
get to it.
So I would interpret that new lot, the pole of the flag, not being included in the new lot that's being created. That's how I would interpret this.
Would you have to calculate both of the new lots without the flag, right? Without the pole of the flag.
This is about easements, and oh gosh, this is a really good question. So the pole of the flag is actually part of one of the lots. So when you subdivide it, you would actually have to create an access easement to the new lot. So that access easement would not be included in the calculation for the square foot area of the lot. That's how I would interpret that. But the lot that actually has the pole, a part of it, would actually still remain as the square foot area of the lot, because it doesn't specifically say that in here. So that's how I would interpret that.
Yeah, I also was like, since you're striking through the flag lot shall not be permitted, are you kind of leaving it up to the applicant on whether they want an easement versus a flag lot?
Well, I am saying that flag lots and lots proposed to be created with access, so I am including flag lots from a public right-of-way, must be granted a waiver by Planning Commission. So I'm not really changing the process in requesting a waiver. It's the same process as before.
But I guess like the way this is written, someone could come in and call it an easement, and someone else could come in and call it a flag lot, but the same parameters apply to either of them. Like the pole can't be counted and the easement can't be counted.
Yeah, I kind of had the same question. Like, what's the difference between the definition of a flag lot or a lot that's created with an access from a public right-of-way, which creates the pole?
Right, it does.
Isn't that a flag lot?
Well, if you're putting the easement on the property that doesn't benefit by the easement, then that property has to, it does have to meet the minimum requirements if it's part of the subdivision. Now, let's just say hypothetically it's not part of the subdivision. You've got an existing lot with a lot in the back, and then they want to subdivide that and then create an easement through the existing lot, then that existing lot would not be part of the subdivision, so it wouldn't be subjected to this land development regulation that we're proposing here. But the lots in the back, if there were two, would be subjected to this language because they're the ones that's requesting the subdivision.
So you could have a situation where like the lot that's agreeing to the easement, if you excluded the easement, it might not meet minimum lot requirements? Because it's an existing lot, it might be right at the minimum lot dimension.
Right, it could.
And then you put the easement through it, so now it doesn't.
Non-conforming.
But yeah.
Then it wouldn't. Like, I feel like there needs to be some language that makes sure that.
Yeah, I kind of thought we were starting with the whole premise that we wanted to prohibit flag lots. It seems like we're getting easier to get we're allowing waivers for flag lots, and I sort of thought we had said we didn't want them.
Matters whether it's a flag lot or an easement. I think what we want is like a certain way for the lots to be measured and configured.
I was thinking of flag lots as the same with lots that only have access to them by way of an easement. If it looks like a flag with a pole by way of an easement from a right-of-way, to me that's a flag lot. That's why I don't understand the difference.
Well, a flag lot, the pole of the flag is actually part of one of the lots. The easement that provides the access to the flag
is not part of
is actually part of the lot that's between that and the right-of-way. So that's the easement. It's on somebody else's property.
I see what you mean, but I mean, what's the benefit of one versus the other? It seems like they all have the same downside.
I think there's like the simple situation of just like one lot being split into two. I could see it being like clear in terms of responsibility and all that, like someone owns, like the person in back owns the pole and maintains it and pays the taxes on it, and the person in front, wipes their hands of it. Rather than if they have an easement through their property, it kind of creates weird, like your property shows up on paper as bigger than it actually is. So, but if you have the situation where like you don't want like 10 poles going back because you have a huge piece of land that's like locked,
Right.
there you would want an access easement. Like if it's multiple lots, I feel like you wouldn't want the flag
I get that.
lot.
But if you have a lot and you want to subdivide and make the back one the flag lot, if you own both, you could just then grant the property that makes the pole to the back lot, which
Yeah.
makes a flag lot, which is kind of giving them the benefit of not using the easement. In other words,
Well, the pole is the same thing as the easement.
exactly, which is why I think we want to discourage them, because they've been a problem. Like in the old Mount Pleasant, I guess, is one example.
We had that one come across us that our hands were kind of tied and we couldn't deny, where they did have to get the neighbor's permission off McCant Street to have that easement come in.
Right.
And so I think we were trying to avoid future situations like that happening. And I'm not sure this language necessarily
I
does
guess
that.
I think we need to address that issue without taking away the prohibition of flag lots. In other words, we're loosening one thing while we're trying to strengthen another thing. We're saying now, instead of flag lots shall not be permitted, now they are permitted if you get a waiver, right? And that
They're still permitted if you get a waiver, like today. That's the way the regulations are written. In the other part of the LDR, I think it might have been A, the very beginning, it says that the planning commission has to grant the waiver for any
with
of the,
those four criteria.
with those four criteria.
Yeah. Okay, I wasn't sure whether I didn't think all things are eligible for waivers, but this is one of the things that's
This is
eligible.
one that's eligible for a waiver, yes, ma'am. So I mean, y'all got an interesting perspective on this. So, but I see what you're saying. If you have a long lot and then somebody wants to use part of their property as the flag pole that is creating as part of the lot in the back, and they actually have enough area of the lot in the front to meet the minimum requirements. I mean, that's essentially, that's meeting what this intent is trying to meet, is to make sure that that home that is granting the flag pole actually meets the zoning standards for that particular subdivision request. So I was approaching this with, let's just make sure that these requests and these subdivisions meet the zoning requirements, not necessarily approaching it as in preventing it.
Yeah.
I was trying to raise the standard and be more specific with what it has to meet.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that the minimum.
So I'm trying to understand the purpose and the reasoning behind easing the restrictions on flag lots, which all the time it comes up at our meetings. We've been opposed to flag lots. So what's the rationale for easing the restrictions on it?
There's not, because I'm not easing the restrictions on flag
Well,
lots.
it says flag lots. You're crossing out flag lots shall not be permitted. I mean, that was pretty black and white.
But I'm just restating it in the proposed language. I'm just restating that the waiver is required, just
It's
like the
saying
waiver's
they're not
required here,
permitted
Mr.
unless
Davis.
you can get a waiver. That's
Right.
another way of saying it.
You're right. Yes. Yeah. So I'm not. The intent was not to allow the flag lots. The intent is to create the new standards for subdivisions to occur with access easements or flag lots. So it wasn't to ease the language on the flag lots.
Should there? I'm just wondering if there should be something in here about because I feel like the scenario is a lot different if it's just one lot turning into two versus one big lot that wants an easement and turning into 5, 6, or multiple. I feel like there are different scenarios.
Yeah.
That's why we have a waiver.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the board is here. And that's
Yeah.
why y'all have to make decisions based upon the application, because every single one of them is going to be a little different. Everybody's going to have a little different lot size, a little different location, a little different configuration. So I won't be able to create a perfect ordinance. I can tell you that. But you make some very good points, and I'll be happy to, go back and create a C if I can just get some direction from you guys, and I'll be happy to come back with this.
Well, one thing I think that you've clarified for me, but maybe just needs to be more clarified because I'm not looking at the prior sections. We're just looking at this.
Yes, ma'am.
It sounded like if you meet the following conditions to meet the zoning requirements, then you can get the waiver. The waiver still has 4 other criteria that have to be met. So, in other words, we still need to apply, we still need to go through those 4 conditions. So it says must be
Yes.
granted a waiver. I guess it was stated so succinctly before, and
now it's not.
And now it's less. So yeah,
Oh.
you have to be able to work through.
I
It sounds
overdid
like
it.
we're
Is that what
loose-
you're saying?
Yeah, it sounds like we're more loose.
I really tried to put the purpose and intent with this too, so it does explain the reason for areas not being part of the easement, and then the measurement from the easement, not the property line. Just because this is the zoning is trying to create standards for subdivisions, so
right.
I think yard areas are important, and making sure that the easement, somebody else's driveway, is actually not
right
used to meet the minimum lot sizes.
So this not really saying
might be a good
anything
idea.
different than what you're saying, but just to make it feel better for me, it would
Okay.
if we said something like this, what you said, flag lots and lots proposed to be created with access from a public right of way via adjacent property shall not be permitted without a waiver by the planning commission, because that basically says the same thing, but it's clarifying you have to tie into the waiver and adhere to the following conditions which are applicable to meet zoning requirements, because the A and B are in addition to getting to meeting the waiver criteria.
Okay.
Right.
I will go with the majority vote here if that's the direction that the planning commission would like to
I have
move
no
in.
issue with that.
I like what you said.
It
I mean,
says the same thing, just in a more like.
It's less like we like them and more
Yeah.
like we don't like them. We have to go through some hoops unless
Is-
So be more mean with your.
Is the
I know.
term
I get it. Okay.
is the
But
term
sir?
flag lot like have a clear definition right now in the zoning? Like, is there like a definition section?
Well, the flag lots are basically lots that don't meet the minimum width of the property. I can't right off the top of my head. I can't skim through the definitions, but
I'm just wondering, like, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that however a flag lot's defined goes along with this. Like it isn't.
we can definitely take a look
It's
at it.
not
and-
the definition's not in the LDRs themselves. Maybe it's in another section or something, but it's not among the.
Yeah, it might be. I'll be happy to bring it back with the definition.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
good. Yeah,
we
probably
could
just
kind of
need-
tease
we
this out a
probably
little
just need
bit.
One more shot at this.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, the one thing I like about this is like it kind of leaves it up to the people involved whether they want an easement or a
Yeah.
lot with a pole. They have to meet the same requirements either
Right,
way.
yeah.
It's just a matter of like.
Right.
That's correct.
It seems like it's like coming up with an easement and all the legal stuff with that seems like a hassle. But it might be like simpler for some people if they just literally have two, clear line of ownership and it's done. So I like that part about this.
I couldn't agree more, Mr. Barber. It would, in scenarios where there's smaller lots, less than 1 acre, typically those poles have to be easements for that particular lot to meet the minimum zoning requirements. So that's why, and a lot of times, that's why those easements are easements and they're not part of the flag, the pole of the flag.
Mm.
That's why that happens a lot.
And the chairman has arrived, and this is an issue that he is interested in, which is the whole flag lot thing. So,
Okay.
um,
It's acceptable to other members of the commission. It doesn't violate protocol. I'd be pleased for Ms. Ireland to continue to preside for the meeting since I'm late. So
yeah,
thank you.
that's fine. I'm happy to continue with it. So I don't think any of us are particularly comfortable with this yet. Tell me if you feel otherwise.
No, I feel the same as you.
I mean, I think it's like 95% there.
Yeah, it's close. That's very close. It's just a matter of really sort of sending the message a little more like we don't like them, but there are ways of getting around it.
We can just modify the language. I mean, I think Mrs. Ireland has some really good points.
Okay, so
do I have a consensus here? The majority is we do have you on video, so I'll go back and look at the video and see what changes that you're proposing if everybody's comfortable with what you suggested. I think it was just some
it's just reconfiguring.
Change must be granted to
shall not be permitted.
Shall not be permitted without a waiver. And
shall comply with the following conditions. Applicable to zoning. Or maybe that just applies to the ones about the easement access.
Right.
But sort of tie that in. It's more the sort of the negative as opposed to the positive approach.
Okay. No, that's easy.
Psychological.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Perfect.
That's real easy. I can bring this back before you next month.
Okay. Perfect.
But the density thing is going to move forward.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We got to vote on that. So.
This is a public hearing, so we'll have to hold one, even though it's
okay.
not required for planning commission to hold one, but this was part of the process to set one
So
up.
even though it's more of a public notice and it's going to have a hearing at council, this is a public hearing. Does anybody want to speak to this issue? Okay. If not, we close the public hearing. So we don't need to vote on this. We just basically gave him some, or do we need to vote?
I think Kevin would like just some kind of direction forward from the
just good practice.
Okay. So I move that we direct staff to reconfigure the language at the lead-in as just discussed.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay. The next item is a sketch plan for Rifle Range Road.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Before you tonight is a subdivision off of Rifle Range Road. It is a roughly an acre lot on Rifle Range Road into two single-family residential lots and a new utility easement further identified by the TMS number. Action to be taken: approval with modifications, or denial. This is just an aerial image down the street from Seaside Farms. And across the street and down a little bit from Hidden Lakes, if that gives you kind of enough idea of where we're at here. Zoning is CC, and future land use is settlement community. So here is the sketch plan before you tonight. In green is the original parcel, red is the proposed subdivision. The lot 2A in front, that is not part of the sketch plan, so it is just the two back lots. That each is around a ½ acre, and the lot 2B is able to access through the existing ingress-egress right here, and then the top lot, there's also an existing 20-foot ingress-egress right here.
So, okay, so just as a point of clarification, so the outlined in green doesn't outline the access easement that's at the bottom below that, right?
Correct.
And whose property is that on?
That, I believe, is part of lot 4. The applicants can speak further to this. They provided a plat a deed restriction providing legal access to both of those for the additional lot and the existing lot.
Okay. Do you want to go through what the thoughts are or the comments, or do you
Yeah.
want to have the applicant come up first?
I have a few more slides I can go through.
Okay.
So this is a tree preservation plan. They are not proposing to remove any significant or historic trees. The yellow are all of the trees that are in fair condition. The green is in good condition. The red line is where the sewer easement and where the sewer line are going to be installed. And then the blue in the back is spading for root exploration, so that the trees remain in good health during construction. An arborist provided a tree preservation plan for both pre and post construction. So I have provided the minimum lot dimensions for CC zoning, 80-foot width by 110-foot depth, minimum square footage of 12,500, around half acre for each lot. They are currently meeting the 160-inch per acre DBH tree requirement, and they're applying with an LDR waiver for subdividing off of a private ingress-egress. So they went through internal DRT staff review on 210. Planning had some corrections that they had noted of the setback orientation. They have since fixed that. Staff requested clarification for 2 notes that was made on the submittal regarding a tree survey and the tree protection plan. And sewer easement is needed to serve 2B1, and the applicant was asked to provide legal access, proving that they had access to both of those through both of those easements, which they have done. So we can go through the LDR responses. The first, there are topographical constraints. There are no wetlands or critical area on the property. There are a total of 6 historic trees on the property. All of the historic trees will be protected in accordance to code. The 42-inch oak tree will have a 21.5-foot radius buffer that will help prevent the new utility easement from damaging the tree. Staff comment: this is not a normal uniform development pattern. The lot shape and configuration of an existing flag lot make the situation unusual. Applicant's only option to subdivide the existing lot is by way of access easement. The next, compliance with one or more provisions of this section is unreasonable, in conflict with public interest, or a practical impossibility. There are no conflicts with public interest or a practical impossibility on the property. Staff's comment: it would be impossible to meet the minimum lot width at the road right-of-way per LDR standards. 3, the modification will not adversely affect the reasonable development of adjacent property. The applicant said the new lots will not affect reasonable development of adjacent properties. Staff comment: no indication the subdivision will impact surrounding neighboring properties from developing. Describe how the public welfare and interests of the town shall be protected. The parcel is 1.02 acres. The lot will be subdivided into 2 new lots. These 2 new lots will not interfere with the general intent and spirit of the regulations for the town of Mount Pleasant. Staff comment: this development does not present a hardship to the existing infrastructure or compromise the existing development pattern of the surrounding area. Again, going into 155.048, the applicant said there are no topographical constraints. Compliance with one or more provisions of this section is unreasonable. There are no conflicts with public interest on the property. Staff comment: it would be impossible to meet minimum lot width at the road right-of-way as per LDR standards. And 3, describe how the public welfare and interests of the town shall be protected. And staff comment was the properties will be accessed by existing access points. So the applicant is here and can speak to this. I am here for any additional questions, and I will leave the site plan up for reference.
If you could return to the map, the previous map, just very quickly. Yeah.
This one?
Yes, that one. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So looking at that, and then flipping it around, the next slide, which has the actual showing the houses. So the easement would be coming on, I just want to see where that easement on lot 4 is to the other proposed lot. If you flip back again to the settlement.
Yeah, sorry, the orientation flips around.
Yeah, it just
but
flips
the way
around a
it was
bit, so I just want to
submitted.
make sure. So is it, it's an easement on an already flag lot, which is 1821?
Correct.
What? We got flag lot on top of flag lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions before we ask the applicant to come up? Okay, is the applicant's here?
Hi, I'm Eric Bakey. I'm the Director of Development for Grantham Homes. I live in West Ashley, 742 West Oak Forest Drive. So our office is also on Savannah Highway. We've been through the technical review process of this. MPW, we've already paid tap and impact fees. We've been working through this process at great length for several months, and also the sellers of the property are here. So I'm here to answer any kind of technical questions, but also just here to see the project through to completion.
Is there any existing house now on the property, or one of these, or is it just bare space?
There's an existing house and an existing garage.
Okay, so which one, when I'm looking at this, there's a lot 2, I can't see if it's 2D or B. There's B, but then there's one above it. So where are the existing structures? These are both existing structures?
These are proposed locations.
Okay. And what's existing right now?
Is closer on the 2B side, and specifically that garage we'd like
That's
to keep.
kind of crosshatched.
Oh, okay.
The crosshatched.
This area, and then this garage is gonna stay.
That crosshatch place, which is the garage. Okay. All right.
And sir, would you confirm ingress and egress? Because I guess we have 2 that have been mapped, as Ms. Ireland pointed out a few moments ago. But the intent is for access to the rear parcel to be through the green, that area there. Okay.
This is for the service 2B, and this is on its own access here.
Okay.
And the bottom green, the access that wasn't part of the green outline before, that's part of lot 5, which is a flag lot now. Is that right?
It is the adjacent property that's not.
But I mean, it leads to the property that's shown here as lot 5, not lot 4.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Any discussion about? I'm trying to make some sense out of the waiver responses. Excuse me? Oh, so, yeah, I mean, you've got the owner here sure, that's fine.
I just had a quick question about is the existing garage that's outside of the setbacks is staying, or I wasn't sure.
If we can demo it if you would like. It was just, it's already there and it seems to be usable. All this is already existing, so.
Well, I thought you said, I saw you circle the lot 2B area. That house is already existing or not? No.
Just the garage.
It's just the garage that's hatched is the only existing structure.
It's an old workshop.
Okay.
And does that structure meet existing setback requirements? Do we know?
Yeah. I'm Jane Nicholas.
Uh-huh.
My husband and I are the owners of this property for 25 years.
Okay.
And when we bought it 25 years ago, we had a little tree service. And so we just parked some trucks back there, and we actually operated it for 30 years here. And so what I know is that the hardship for us is that when we bought it, it is the one entrance. We had never heard of a flag lot, and and we really hadn't until more recently. So we feel that if you can see that the lot, there's a line of houses that are Seaside Farms, and they're all quarter-acre lots. And then they've developed on Rifle Range 3 houses there. And a full 1-acre lot doesn't really fit if to build a house it's not HOA governed at all. So somebody could pretty much come in there, and if you didn't have a builder who was going to build 2 houses that would fit on half-acre lots, fit in that community better than somebody who may come in and, I don't know, raise chickens or, something else that they could do, store their RVs and boats and what have you. So we, knowing that we could sell it as an acre lot, we feel in our community it would fit better because we are one of those houses that border. This was our backyard there. And so we're really concerned about, and all of these are our neighbors that live next to us. So to answer the 4 hardships that we do feel like we had, that the town, that you feel like that this is an exceptional, yes, it is a flag lot with a whole acre there. And that is what limits us, is that it did have just one entrance, but the access is a legal forever access to the other lot. So to have 2 half-acre lots there, really each with their own accesses, makes more sense in this particular neighborhood. So the constraint, and of course we followed the other flag lot case here, but to build 2 separate houses we have looked at, again, because we're there, the houses that Grantham builds, and we know these would just fit in very well in our neighborhood. The drive that we own, that is part of the property, is very well maintained. It's already hard gravel, got a beautiful fence going to it. It's quite unique piece of property because nobody knows it's even there. It's just there's a sweet little cottage on this lot in front along Rifle Range, and you would just not even know that this is very private back there. So the 2 houses are not going to have an impact on Rifle Range, the look. Everyone behind us, our neighbors, will love that it's then not. And I'll go back, just when we bought this, the neighbor on that lot, I think y'all named it lot 5, he had a dump there, literally like a hoarder's dump. And we bought it and cleaned it up. And he as well kept a hoarder's dump until this past year, when the county, he's a sliver of county land, and they came and made him move all the dilapidated trailers and all that. So we've worked to kind of make that area back there clean. We know that they're on septic, and we brought in Mount Pleasant sewer to the back of the lot. So to answer yes, I do think we have physical conditions that are extraordinary, that I think case by case, it is something that that y'all, I appreciate that y'all will consider case by case. And the reasonable use of this property is for residential. It's zone CC, but it's bordered all by houses. And do you have any questions?
I'm not sure if this is a question for you or a question for staff, but I'm looking at the staff comments after their review, and one of them is legal access to the ingress-egress easement must be verified. The owner provided a deed restriction from 1999 and 1990, ensuring the future property owners would have legal access. but I'm not quite sure. Is that future property owners of your property or of lot? I'm assuming it's talking about the easement that's owned by the Lot 5 owner.
It's to our lot too. And there has always been a big gate
Okay.
there.
Yes.
Ma'am, I am reviewing that. If there's an approval, I would just suggest you put the condition on that
subject
it's
to
satisfied,
conditions.
subject to legal review.
Got it.
Of course, it would have to be on the final plat as well.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
So, yeah, the staff comments as I'm reading them are, planning staff request setback orientation for lot 2B1. It's really hard to tell which ones are which here on this, so small. The tree standards are met. There's a sewer easement needed for lot 2A, and then we have to verify the legal access that exists. I mean, comments?
Yeah, I have one question regarding just ingress, egress, access in general. Well, what are the requirements in terms of width or space on that per our ordinance? Does anybody, Kevin?
During our DRT process,
Yeah.
the fire marshal is part of that, and he
Okay.
requires a 20-foot width.
Okay,
for
20
ingress egress easement. and
Got it. Thank
that
you.
is on there.
Okay.
Right. We do have it. And actually, when we used this property, we did not use our drive that we own. We actually always used the other one for 25 years.
I mean, although I'm definitely not in favor of flag lots, I do know as part of the settlement community, the CC allows 3 units per acre, and this would be 2 in an acre. So that's actually less dense, which is good. So, I do think this is kind of an unusual exception to the general idea that we don't like flag lots. I appreciate that. I appreciate the circumstances are a little different here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ms. Ireland. I don't think it strays from the development pattern of the other parcels in this particular community. So I'd be willing to make a motion if others are prepared.
Yeah, I mean to include the conditions. That
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to approve as presented, with the understanding that there would still be review of appropriate ingress egress access per council.
Second.
And the sewer easement.
And the sewer too, yes, as I think already proposed. Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion before we vote? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any nays? Nope. Okay, the motion passes
Thank you.
unanimously. Okay. Update on wetlands ordinance.
Thank you. This is, I guess, another kind of public notice here. This is our land development regulations, and if y'all recall, this came before you a couple months ago, and it has gone through the flood resilience planning committees. We received some direction from the flood resilience on the exceptions, and they also concurred with y'all's recommendation to include the single family activity that was previously not proposed, but is now since been inserted into the language here. So we felt like it was appropriate to come back to you just as a public update, and receive whatever commentary that y'all may have, because it will travel through the flood resilience and planning committee in March, and then move through town council either at the March town council or either beginning in the April town council meetings. One of the things that was included were the exceptions. That took a lot of discussion there, and our legal counsel made the recommendation of including very similar language, actually verbatim, pretty much from the city of Bluffton, which is currently moving through their permanent wetland ordinance as well. But What it pertains to is we're including the single family activity, but it is an exemption for less than 5 acres with the following conditions that are met. So all three, A, B, C, have to be met for them to be exempt from the wetland delineation. So one is the owner has to certify he has no knowledge of a wetland being on their property. The second one is there's no indication or history that there is wetlands using the information we have that's readily available on the internet. And lastly is the land service or activity proposed is accessory to the existing use and does not increase the density of the site. So that means like one lot into two, that you would not be exempt from that for a subdivision request. So it's so we moved forward with that. The Flood Resilience Committee voted in approving, was in favor of doing this with that exception added. As I mentioned, and I'm adding this, just the outline, I'm not going through the ordinance again, just for discussion if y'all would like to discuss. But under specific requirements applicability, the residential and non-residential permitted activity has now been included, and I think that was y'all's recommendation. And also the residential and non-residential subdivision requests are all still remain in there too. So that captures, you know, the single family activity as well as the subdivision activity. All the rest were the same, except with the D there being number 3, being added with a condition for 5 acres and less, being also exempt 2 was added as well. So very quickly, the key highlights of this is only, just to make sure everybody understands, this is only for non-jurisdictional wetlands. Jurisdictional wetlands are under the authority of the Army Corps of Engineers. So this regulation is just for non-jurisdictional isolated wetlands. Another one is, one of the key components is, if we do indicate that there are suspected wetlands on property, we would require them to provide certification from a wetland professional who has at least 5 years of experience dealing with wetlands. So it wouldn't be somebody that, like an engineer or a landscape architect, it would be somebody with some credentials of being able to determine, you know, whether or not this is or is not a wetland. That's also included. Also, we talked about subdivision, single family activity. The buffer, that did have some discussion when it came before you. Still kept the 10 foot, no more than 20, but no less than 5. And also, it was y'all's recommendation, and it made it through the ordinance, is that the outside boundary environmental protection area or larger as deemed by the Planning Commission. So when we come across larger isolated wetlands on larger tracts of land, then that actual buffer could be increased as deemed by the Planning Commission. The rest are the exceptions which we just discussed being part of this. And if there's not any questions on this, I'm going to turn this over to Maeve. She's really been working pretty hard on our mapping tool, which is going to be very cool, and I think she's off to a very good start. She's been working very hard with our GIS department on this. But before we get into that, any questions or discussions on the direction we're headed in?
Have any questions? I'm fine with
Good. Okay. The most interesting part, I think, is going to be this tool here, and I think she's done a great job putting it together and getting it this far. So.
Thank you. All right. So this is very preliminary. So just wanted to emphasize that. But Bluffton had just released their study with their mapping tools, so we were able to take some of their methods and apply it to the data that we have available both at the town and federally. So I'll kind of go through what each color means, and then we'll get into some examples. So starting at the bottom, that bright green color, that is the National Wetland Inventory provided by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So that has not been updated since 2011. Then the darker red color, that is the hydric soils provided by the Natural Resource Conservation Service, USDA, through the USDA. So any soils in a hydric condition, that is going to show up with the dark red.
So I just have a silly question. What does hydric mean?
So it's soils that found in a, yeah, exactly,
water?
wet. Yep, perfect. Purple sinks or depressions. So wherever there is a depressional storage area in the town, that's going to be purple. Blue is both the hydric soil layer and the depression layer overlaid. So where both of those things are seen on the map, that's going to be blue. And then the bright red is going to be all three of those things. So it's going to be the hydric soil layer, the NWI inventory, and this depressions in the town where all three of those things overlap is going to be the bright red. So we're going to get into some examples. Okay, so our first example is going to be on Pocahontas Street in the Old Village. So the red rectangle, that is the property that we're looking at. So you can see this is the 2025 GIS imagery. And then when we apply our map, we can see that there are hydric soils and there's a depression. So if we think about how this would be applied, they want to come through, do something on their property. Someone on staff level, single family inspectors, whoever it may be, could use this tool, say, oh, you have hydric soils, there's a sink on your property, there could be a chance that there's a wetland, you need to go get a delineation.
That's amazing. That's pretty cool.
So heading into another one, this is off of Rifle Range Road, and that intersecting road is Bowman Road. So again, any of those single family homes, we overlay this mapping tool. We can see there's two of those indicators that there's a good chance of a hydric condition. You would need to go get a delineation. And in this tool, you can search by address and TMS number, and it'll bring you right there.
That's a great tool.
Yeah, going.
So just some spot checking. We used 2 projects that we knew had delineations done. So we wanted to see how this tool measured up to those. So this is a subdivision, Willow Pond Road. So on the top, this is their plan set with their wetland delineation. So the wetland delineation is all in here. And then we were able to overlay our map on that. So the green, the NWI data, that picked it up. You can also see there's hydric soils, there's sinks, and our layer that showed all 3 of those intersecting also showed up. So if this project came through and, well, this is a larger project, but say it was single family, we could use our data and say, hey, these things are showing up in your property, you need to go get a delineation.
What's the threshold on like when you would ask someone to do that? Like some of these peripherally, there's like one little dot on the property, so like then they have to get like it seems like this is going to require basically everyone to do it.
Well, if we go back to Pocahontas Street, there's a few surrounding that don't have it, but it is, like I said, very preliminary. When you work out the kinks, but this is kind of just a start.
Okay, so in this one okay, I guess I was a little confused that you were only looking at the red rectangle, but you're saying in this whole picture that blue dot is the only dot.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to continue that thought, I mean, just to extend that thought, my concern is that we may be opening ourselves up to evaluation for almost every parcel in town, right? And beyond that, the property owners in this situation are going to look at the town and the commission and staff like we're crazy. just because they're going to say this is not wetland. I mean, I'm standing right on top of it. Whatever I've been in these situations before in a former life when in some large projects where some of the property had been designated wetland, but it was hard to believe that it was designated wetland. I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
And maybe that was my takeaway at that time, not having a deep real estate development background at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was that it was just an unusual case. But now I think I'm learning that it may not have been that unusual.
Yeah. Some of those larger projects are going to have to go and do that delineation and that due diligence anyway. This kind of just gives staff that preliminary idea of whether there's something there. And then ultimately, it's their environmental scientists that they hire to go out there and delineate, that would say. And, they're just making the delineation. And then if they wanted to go a step further, Army Corps of Engineers is the only one who can actually say that is a wetland or not. So, there's kind of steps to this.
And you mentioned only the Army Corps, but wasn't there another federal body that had some jurisdiction as well?
So the Army Corps.
Away the inland part, didn't they?
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, what was that? Oh, okay. I don't know if I understand the question. What was the question again?
Oh, I see now. So natural resources conservation. So the USDA also plays a role.
So they have a lot of natural resource data.
Sure.
So that's where we got our soil data from.
Oh, I see. So they're not making they don't have a team that makes a judgment.
Mm-mm.
You're just using their data for this purpose. I see. I understand better now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the red, blue, and purple data coming from?
The purple data are the depressions in the town. So that's going to be like a topographical depression that could hold water, basically.
I see. Okay.
The blue is both the hydric soils, so the wet soil, overlaid with those depressions, because there's several indicators that say whether there's a higher probability of there being a wetland. Two of those strong indicators are hydric soil and a depression. So that's why we overlaid those two data points together. And so that would be the blue color.
But for any of these colors on a lot, you would want the delineation. Or is it okay to have a depression but not hydric soils?
We would most likely look at the hydric soils and sinks, the blue colors. But again, we're still kind of figuring out how this is going to be applied. And we did look at Bluffton's methodology. Their methodology was more extensive, so that's not to say that we can't take this data and go even further. They used a statistical program to run a probabilities test based off of the data in their town. So, just kind of using internal staff time that we have, this is at least something that we can use instead of kind of shooting in the dark.
Mm-hmm. And Bluffton's seen a lot of growth over the last decade or more too. So I guess there's parallels to our community. Do you have a sense for how frequently they're going to the next level in terms of analysis on a parcel by parcel basis?
I do not. In their study, they went over in their special town council. They just kind of went over the methodology that their consultants provided and showed an example of their maps based off of their maps showed it was based off probability. So it was high, medium, low probability. So I don't know, how much of the town falls within what. But I do have one more example if you guys would like to see.
Well, again, my only the takeaway for me is that we could be adding a tremendous amount of burden on staff, on property owners to prove that their parcel isn't wetland when that may not be what we really want, what we really intend, at least at some level. I don't know what the right threshold is. This isn't my field, but it just seems like a lot. So.
You're spot on. I think there's some a little concern with kind of over policing this and it being a burden on the actual homeowner. But we are going to we are treating this as a work in progress here.
Okay.
We do anticipate, coming back in a few months and reporting back on the effectiveness of the program. or the ordinance, and seeing how it's received and seeing how successful we can be at doing what council wants us to do, and that is protect isolated wetlands. So there is going to be cases where somebody wants to do something, and then this regulation is going to do what it's intended to do. You can't do it. So there is going to be that sort of scenario that is going to come up. But you can't. I mean, you have to drive the car before it actually you figure out if it's going to run. And I think Bluffton and the town and there's some other municipalities are moving somewhat in the same direction together. Bluffton is kind of like taking the lead on this, but I do imagine that we will run into some situations where there will have to be some revisions and maybe some tweaking and some honing in on certain things once we kind of get going. So.
And again, last comment, and I'll be quiet. But I can make arguments both ways. I applaud the sensitivity toward this as we continue to grow, and the water only has so many places to go, and we got sea level rise and all those factors. So, but again, as I've said previously, there's so much blue out here that I think a lot of property owners are going to say, I don't know how in the world this could be defined as wetland.
And I do want to preface that this would also pick up ponds. So like this area here, that's a pond. So, we can turn on and off this layer and, oh, there's blue. Let me turn it off. Let me see what's under there. It's
I
pond.
see. Yeah.
So there is, definitely work in progress. And by no means is this 100% accurate. And I think all of these studies preface that the only way to determine this fully is to go out and delineate. But this was my last example of Rifle Range Road Park. So they did a delineation as well. So I overlaid their delineation to the tool of all the layers that came up. So it pretty accurately found some isolated wetlands. If we look here, it got all of these in here. This in here is actually the only wetland that was on the NWI inventory. So if we were to solely go off of that, we would have lost a lot of data in here of what wetlands were actually there. Regardless, this project would have had to delineate those wetlands anyway, just because it's such a larger project and it has a larger impact. But because they were able to go out and delineate this project is saving a lot of wetlands. But it was just interesting having this delineation and being able to compare it.
So have you overlaid the proposed plan of building on the Rifle Range Park to make sure that, it's in an area where it's not affected by any of these worse areas? I mean, it looks to me like most of it would be just below that pond area that you pointed out.
They had to work very closely with Coastal Zone Consistency through the Bureau of Coastal Management in order to work this out. They had a whole wetland master plan. So I know that they did a lot of work in order to preserve as many of the wetlands as they could.
Right.
Yep. Just to add to that, and I knew you were going to go there, but yes, they are saving 8 plus acres of isolated wetlands. So most of that stuff that you do see is being incorporated into their park design.
Yeah. Because I was just thinking, this tool, this is an example. This tool is great when someone is proposing a subdivision. It's like we have to know, is what they're proposing in the worst part or in the best part, as well as all the other things we worry about in subdivisions. It's very helpful to know. You wouldn't always see it, visibly like a pond, so that's very helpful.
That was all I had for you guys for showing.
Great point, Pam, because maybe the applicability could be defined in such a way too that I'm making something up. If someone wants to build an extra bedroom on their home that may or may not, per some sort of square footage amount, that may or may not trigger the need for some sort of wetland evaluation. I don't know. I'm just thinking about how to.
It's like building an ADU on the backyard of the property.
As opposed to, a new home, a full home, or 3 homes, or a new subdivision, or whatever the case may be. A store or strip center.
Okay.
So, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, any other comments? Or this I'm fascinated. This is really a cool tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Do-
we're
like it.
excited about it.
Yeah, I like it.
It's gonna be
Does
it's
like-
a great start. It's a great start.
Yeah,
to
it's
something.
really
I think
good.
It's gonna get better.
You had mentioned like comparing it to Bluffton, but like does Charleston County or Charleston do all this same stuff? Or?
Charleston County, I know, is kind of on their way, I believe, but they do not have a full inventory of our wetlands, of the county's wetlands.
Great. Thanks. This is good progress. Okay, so the next item is discussion and possible recommendations to amend the LDR chapter. And so Mr. Bennett and Ms. Mansour and I talked about some possibilities. We were concerned in particular that it seems to be there are more robust tools in the LDRs for us to make decisions, especially about things like settlement communities, for things like streets and blocks, but not just sort of overall or more in a more general area. So what I did, and I don't know if I can make a motion as the chair, but I'd like to move that we add into the record, because I made I put into one piece of paper or two pieces some options, and I thought this would be something that we could all work from.
These right here, these on the slide.
It's actually, I just made it a little simpler.
Okay.
So we can do that, because that was kind of part of the email, but I think that's part of the by way of background and what supports all this. And then these are just sort of some options to think about. And we would look to you for sort of to say, this doesn't really work this way, or we can do it, but in a different way, or something like that. So let's work on this, but let me also just hand this out if you wouldn't mind. So can I move and get a second to add this to the record?
So you made the motion, I'll second it.
Yeah, okay. So all those in favor of using what I'm about to hand out?
And in terms of protocol, the reason she's doing that is because she's introducing material that wasn't included in the agenda that was posted. Is that correct, Peter?
That's correct. This will allow it to be added to the minutes of the
Thank you.
meeting.
Okay.
Here's one for you.
So motion made and seconded. So.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. And here's one for you and for Mr. Stone as well. You're welcome. Let me keep one for myself. Hold on, let me keep one for myself.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. All right. So yeah, the beginning, Kevin, is helpful because we were trying to sort of say, there are things that are in our comprehensive plan, action points, and comments in our comp plan that sort of, I think, support the need to do this. And do you want me to go through them? I mean,
I would love it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thanks for doing this, by the way. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So, we're authorized as the Planning Commission to prepare amendments or, new LDRs to council for adoption. And we'd like to make sure, because the sketch plans are the things that commission approves and they don't go beyond to council. And we want to make sure that when we approve them, they're in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Some of the action items are about the Sweetgrass Basket overlay district. So it's revisit it to ensure the compatibility of future development within the existing community in terms of lot sizes, uses, roads, density, and prevent developers from removing land from the district in order to protect the integrity of the settlement communities. This is relevant to zoning and to the LDRs. One of them, a next one is to evaluate town land development regulations and storm management standards to ensure the latest techniques, methods, and best management practices. The next one is to require any subdivision and development with buildings and infrastructure with agriculture or vacant land to connect with existing neighborhoods and match the quality and character of the existing development. And then with respect to infill, there's a challenge that's noted in the comp plan that infill projects, which are, adding to a lot that has something on it already, let's say, are surrounded by established development. Larger scale buildings and an increased level of activity can be viewed as encroaching on an established lifestyle and character. And I think of that not just with settlement communities, but with other neighborhoods. And then lastly, there's one on page 536 that says, protect the integrity of 4 Mile, 6 Mile, 7 Mile, and Hamlin neighborhoods by limiting rezonings for subdivision development and improving support for the residents' traditional businesses and ways of life. So to me, these all kind of go to character of neighborhoods and protecting quality of life and historic traditions, if we can. So in the LDRs as they exist right now, we do have something but it's under streets that says the layout of the streets as to arrangement, character, width, grade, and location may be required to conform to the town's comp plan and official map to adjoining street systems or adjoining properties, and to topography, natural features, and drainage systems. So the word character appears there, but in what I thought we sort of needed to give ourselves a better tool to do what we're intending is to add character in a way to the prior section, which is 155.047. And there's a section in there, C2, that says, and this is in my first part of what I just handed out, it says the lot size, width, shape, grade, and zoning orientation shall be in proper relation to applicable zoning requirements, street and block design, existing and proposed topographical conditions, and the type of development and use contemplated. So I was thinking that at the very minimum, we could add an E to that to say the historic look and character of the community or something of that nature. So that's kind of the best I could come up with at the time. And in the beginning, the lead-in, we might want to add to lot size, width, shape, grade, etc., the proportion of street frontage to lot depth. And that actually came up today when I was sitting in on the 10-mile meeting that Mr. Pinkney was pointing out that in the settlement communities in particular, they're very concerned about maintaining the proportion of the lot sizes from street front to depth. So that could be covered under size and width and shape, but I just wasn't sure if that was too nebulous. So I wanted to add this just in case to discuss. So that's one suggestion, because then if we saw a subdivision application, a sketch plan that we felt in looking at the community, like let's say it's a settlement community or the surrounding community, and if it really did not fit the character of it, that would give us a tool, to say no or to require something different. If you want me to go on, the next ones, I'll just go through them all and then we can talk about whether any or all of these are worth, recommending. The next one, I was thinking for proposed subdivisions in area designated as settlement community, future land use. We could require the applicant to show proof of coordination with the community association and existing residents living in close proximity to ensure there's no negative impact. What happens sometimes is we get these things in settlement communities and they haven't necessarily gone to speak with the settlement community leaders or association. And, so this would be something to require. In fact, many times in the past, I know we on commission have asked the applicant, have you talked with the people who live there? And you might find out they hadn't really talked with them or coordinated. So I think that would be a good idea.
Do the in relation to that, like we have the issue of like the county has made these historic areas for the settlement communities, but we don't have a corollary for it.
Right.
So I don't know if those county regulations would like cover some of this if we had a mirrored.
Well, first of all, we wouldn't be looking at this at all unless we had an annexed property coming in. So in other words, the county properties, they do have things that they're doing now for the historic district overlays. That was one of the things this morning at the meeting was for 10 Mile. So if we're not looking at a subdivision, for instance, unless it's a property that's in the town. Right, I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Well, I'm just saying that like there might already be a mechanism for that settlement community if it weren't in the county, if it weren't in the town and was in the county, they'd already have a process to like make sure what they're doing fits in.
But see, they wouldn't have to use that if they're in the town.
Well,
It's
that's what
it's
I'm
a one or the other.
I know, but I'm saying like, can we? I think what the town really needs is like a mirrored approach.
They're doing that.
Yeah.
So the reason I mentioned and had Mr. Stone mentioned to everyone when he sent out the packet that there was a meeting at 10 this morning was this was the first of them. It was and this is a little bit off subject, but just it's relevant. The 10-mile community has worked for several years with the county, and staff here has been involved in that because we're looking to mirror what the county is doing. The county just passed it. We now, planning committee, met in a special meeting at 10 this morning, just with respect to 10 Mile, and looked at the draft that mirrors the county's. There were a couple of places where we felt, or they felt, that it really wasn't applicable to us. There were things like additional densities, high densities for affordable housing that are countywide that aren't applying to us. So they're moving that now to committee. It will eventually come to commission for a public hearing. So they're working on that mirrored, but it is a process, and each one of the settlement communities that is looking to do that has a different time frame for this. So Phillips and Hamlin are next in the, I think, are next, but they're behind 10 Mile. So they are definitely doing this. And to the extent that this ends up maybe being duplicative of something that comes in the historic, we can then possibly, once we've got those in our protection of our zone, we might find that some of this isn't any longer necessary. But I'm thinking it could be months or even years before we get some of those.
Well, has anyone like gone to the Historic District Preservation Committee and like, do they even know about this issue? Because they're the ones that would make a new district.
They know about it, and they don't now apply to anybody other than the Old Village. The reason that this is a whole long story, but the Historic District, and Mr. Stone, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but so far I'm hoping I'm correct here. The Historic District Preservation Commission was changed from that Old Village so that it could apply to other areas of town. Previously, it was just specific to the Old Village, so it can provide oversight for other areas of town, but it doesn't yet. And so part of the getting the 10 Mile overlay, for instance, just to use that first one as an example, they're talking about the best way to have oversight and who reviews those things. The easiest way to do that would be to have representatives from 10 Mile be on the Historic District Preservation Commission. And then how we do that and who gets what votes and whether there's, because again, you'd have people from the Old Village making decisions about 10 Mile. So.
Yeah, I don't know that that's I'm just saying that like, I don't know if there's another process, but the process I know of is that like that commission can make a new district. It doesn't mean that it applies all the old requirements to that new district.
Yeah, it can. And Mr. Bennett, you have a lot of knowledge about the historic district preservation too, but they can, but I think they're subject to town council, and so town council has to sort of blend these things together if they're going to do that. It can't just be the historic district that decides it's now going to rule over 10 Mile.
No, they would just propose that there be a new district. I don't think that they would necessarily even want to be involved with it. But that might be the mechanism to like start the process.
It would. All those things I just mentioned are all part and parcel of that whole process. There are lots of pieces, moving pieces of this. But until those are all done, and because we are looking at sketch plans that come up before us that give us problems, I'm looking at ways that we can, have some tools that we can rely on in the LDRs, because
Sure.
I don't think we can just wait. And plus, those are the settlement communities. These things could apply to a subdivision in a different area of town, in a different neighborhoods, not just the settlement communities.
Is there any way to like temporarily use the county guidelines as like a reference, like temporarily? No.
I mean, there were even things mentioned today to the planning committee that, couldn't we have their enforcement mechanism apply or various aspects of it? And the answer, as Mr. Pellegrini said, no, that would be a real problem, right? That you can speak to that.
Lawyers aren't good at hard answers, but that's a hard no.
Exactly. I picked up on that today at 10 at that meeting. Yeah, so it sounds like it could be logical, but it doesn't work really. So anyway, that's why, yeah, I mean, if there were a simpler way to do this, believe me, I wouldn't have spent a lot of time doing all this, but, and these may be things that you don't think are necessary even now, but we can at least talk through them. So the third one is for areas that are conventional neighborhood, not settlement community, but conventional neighborhood. My thought there would be to have something, and this doesn't have to be this particular language, but that the subdivided lot size or dimensions would be similar to, or maybe not less than the majority of, the average lots that exist within a certain perimeter. So in other words, you look at the surrounding character of the community, and you're not putting, some largely dense subdivision in the middle of, R1 zoning, let's say, or something like that. Then some other thoughts were for properties that have septic systems. Some of the properties come in and they can only have septic because of where they're located. I thought of one on Rifle Range that we had to deal with not that long ago. Perhaps adding that the lot sizes have to be larger because they have to accommodate leaching fields, that sort of thing. Another one, which is something that it should be familiar to people from a recent issue we had, is for dead-end streets that exceed the acceptable length in the LDRs. Dead end can only be a certain length long, but if they say there's a potential connection to an currently unconnected street, it might be helpful to get a statement from the jurisdiction that holds the road holder, as to the plans and timing for any future connectivity. This is so that someone can't just say, well, we're allowed because we will eventually be able to connect to this other road. If there's no intention of the state to ever connect the road, then it really is it's a permanent, not a temporary. So that could be something. And then finally, another thought is to lower the threshold that applies to the green space preservation plan. It currently only applies to more than 5 acres, so that if we applied it to something smaller in proposed subdivisions, it would trigger a larger open space requirement. So those are the thoughts. I went through them. The three of us thought they were worth discussing, and it's up to the group here as to whether we think we should make any of these as recommendations to Planning Committee and Council.
For this last one, like what would be a threshold that you think makes sense?
Excuse me?
For the last item.
And well, you said with respect to the last item, what I couldn't.
What threshold would
like,
you recommend?
Oh, sorry. What
Are you
threshold?
thinking like 4 acres or 3 acres, or
doing
it to everything? I don't know. Like if someone has one lot and splits it into 2, now they got to put 20% open space. It might not make sense.
Yeah. I don't have a particular answer, but I think 5 acres is a big subdivision. So to me, if you have a let's say a zoning designation of like even community conservation, even CC, which is one of the lowest we have, that's 3 lots per acre. So you start to think about 2 acres would be 6, theoretically, assuming they could fit, otherwise with access, 6 lots. So it seems to me maybe 2 acres. I mean, when you've got somebody who's a homeowner that owns a lot and wants to just subdivide it with 1 extra lot, that's one thing. But when you're starting to talk about a larger subdivision,
maybe like having a number of houses or number of lots involved would like trigger the threshold.
So Kevin, any thought to you about what would work best in terms of lowering the threshold? Would it be by acres or by numbers of proposed lots in a subdivision? Is there any benefit to doing one versus the other?
I mean, I can tell you the 5 acre threshold has only been really applied to 2, maybe 3 developments over the past few years.
Because they're pretty small generally.
So yeah, I know. Well, all we're
so
seeing
built
is, yeah, I mean, all we're seeing is the smaller county properties that have become annexed, and then of course they're looking for the sewer because they want to subdivide the property. So it's a great idea. I mean, if it all depends on, the body here wants to recommend something for us to come back to you with, so we could work on, crafting an ordinance and try to get it moving. But
yeah, you could also, like, the other way you could do it is, even though like in CC you're saying you're allowed 3 lots per acre, if you choose to go to only like a lesser amount, then it wouldn't trigger this or something. I don't know. Like, you could have a low threshold but then a way out.
Well, if they went with a lower amount, they would meet the threshold, the higher threshold, because they wouldn't have as many buildings on it. So that would be, they would be able to meet it that way.
But the green space is like, that's dedicated space that like no one in the development owns, or is it? It can be like partially on people's properties.
It's owned by the property HOA.
If there, so in other words, if there's a subdivision,
right?
What if there's a subdivision of 1 lot into 3, and they're going to be just private lots? The green space preservation would not apply at all.
It depends on if the parcel is greater than 5 acres.
But if we were to make it less than 5 acres, and there's no HOA, they're just going to subdivide and sell off the properties, and it's not going to be part of a.
You mean like a tract takedown where you got this large, and then they're just trying to sell it to John Whalen and then the D.R. Hortons and stuff like that?
We just had here where people subdivided 1 lot into 2, let's say, and they're going to just build houses on those 2.
Right.
It's not an HOA.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example. The one we just had.
Right.
Would open space be meaningful to be applied to that type of proposal? I mean, that's the question, right?
But they elected to go to a lower density just voluntarily, which makes it feel less,
Yeah,
consistent with that thought. I mean, maybe instead what you do is you apply lot coverage ratios, so then you have de facto
smaller lot
green
coverage
space.
ratio.
Yeah.
So rather than green space, so that's an idea. So to have,
And I think that's part of the conversation that planning committee and others are having right now is.
right. Well, and also for 10 Mile, part of what's in their 10 Mile overlay from this morning is their lot coverage ratio or building ratio is 25%. With impervious surface added, it's 30%. So that's lower. What is ours normally? 35 or 40 or?
Yeah, it's
depending on
the building area
zone.
ratio is around 30, 35, something like that. We don't have impervious surface limitations only in the old village.
Yeah, right. So maybe that's a good recommendation to go with the building area.
Yeah, especially given what Kevin described a few moments ago, where you've only had a small number of these situations, given the build out of the
so
town.
it could go to 25, let's say, and then that would be something lower than, and that's consistent with what the settlement community wants in their overlay, which makes some sense, because some of these would be in settlement communities. So let's.
Yeah, I understand the objectives that that you're trying to achieve. I guess collectively we're trying to achieve in addressing this. The one that gave me a little bit of pause is the second, and I'd really ask that staff, including David, take a good look at the language, because I don't know that it reads as though you're anticipating consensus.
Yeah.
And I think that's an unreasonable standard.
Yeah, you're never going to have.
You're never going to have consensus, because then we know from the settlement communities, at least the dynamics are very often you've got, half a dozen families who live on the parcel, but they've got cousins or extended family members that live elsewhere, and their economics involved, and some want to sell, and you know, it's just it's
Or some of them are investors that have bought
that's right,
properties
and
that are
it's just
living
messy.
in California. You know?
Yeah, it's messy.
Yeah.
Not to jump, because just getting this and reviewing it, and obviously
Yeah.
it's going to take a lot of effort
Sure.
for us to go through.
Yeah.
I will tell you initially, Mr. Bennett, that is my concern.
Yeah.
Right,
There's
right.
no way to apply this.
Right,
Right.
And
right.
there's no standard in which to do so.
Yeah.
I think the commission already has the. You can ask. Did
Sure.
you
Yeah,
check?
and we do.
I mean, I think it's more of an informal, uncodified way
Okay.
of doing it,
Yeah.
which is likely the better way. But I'll look at it.
Okay, that's good advice. Thank you.
So, just a question related to that. Since we do ask generally, you know, have you talked with the community, and you know, like
Yeah.
we were talking tonight about a different issue, but about a PD amendment. Is there something that gives us the right to say no if they haven't? In other words, could that go to character, or in other words, it's one thing to ask, but what I always worry about is, are we on legal footing to be able to deny something if it's not specifically something in the LDRs, which is why I'm trying to get some.
Yeah.
And are they telling us the truth?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I look at every question. Staff's heard me say this for years. Every board and commission, I envision myself explaining this to a judge, and a reasonable look. There's no objective way to look at that.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine that we would be. And again, that's where I'm coming from. I'll look at it closer, but my answer to you right now is, I don't think there's a judge in the world that would allow us to get away with that.
Yeah.
That standard, which isn't
would be
really a standard,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that would be
Right.
difficult.
So that's why, yeah, this is one of those more nebulous things that I agree with you is kind of a pretty loosey-goosey and hard. Some of these others, I'm trying to find more specific, you know, measures that would give us
For the
some teeth.
for the settlement communities, like I don't understand their mechanics. Like, do they have a private organization that they?
That's another problem is go to leaders. I mean, some of these being kind are self-appointed
Right.
leaders. There's no mechanism.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying
some are
don't
more
look to them
organized
for
than
answers.
And beyond that, sometimes they have a couple of leaders and they don't always agree.
That's right.
There's just no authorization that they would have.
Right.
And again, in looking at it, that's just one more
Right.
one more issue and one more problem with it.
So if we look more at the first one, I think are we on some decent footing if we talk about the look and character, the historic look and character?
That's one that's gonna require a little more scrutiny
Okay.
for us. We do have other parts of our code that do
talk about-
stress those things.
Yes.
And again, it's going to be one of those, at least from my standpoint. And again, I'm only here offering advice and recommendations
Yep.
on these. You know, but if that's something that would want to move forward with, I'd probably want to tighten it up. 'Cause I don't know what historic look and character mean.
Right.
And it depends on neighborhood. It depends on so many factors.
Right. Right.
But I
If
think
we can figure out a way to tighten that up to make you know, to sort of further the intent, which is this is, and maybe we have to say it's by lot depth, by proportion of, you know, street frontage to depth of lot or something. Maybe we have to be much
Yeah,
more specific.
Yeah, I think you've got to use different words besides look and character and like.
Well, that's what we were just saying.
yeah,
That if we can tighten
proportion
up.
and
That's like
spacing.
what I said to Miss Ireland last week when I had denied one of the at the last meeting. I was the only one to deny the subdivision, and it was not on legal grounds because I was like, it's not in keeping with character of the neighborhood. Now I can't really.
I didn't hear a word you just said.
So
It passed. So
yeah,
she
it
heard
passed. It didn't. Yeah, I was the only one.
No,
But
but,
that was my thought was not only because there was no turnaround at the end of the
This-
long driveway. It was also this
yeah,
is
Miss Ireland,
yeah,
you know,
can't.
you've been on for years and can attest that is all of these when it's looked at, and I've been asked questions directly. what is an effective way to deny it? And the answer, as Miss Ireland well knows, she doesn't like my answer.
Has to be.
Is there something in the code?
Is there
something that can point to? And again, it goes back to my test. Judge is going to say, David, what is the basis? And I have to point to something in that code in order and so when we put language like this, then the second test is there any objective means by which we can measure that? And that's why we have minimum lot sizes.
Right.
That's why we have setbacks. It's why we have all of these things already. And that's why we need to be very careful when we're adding restrictions on top of that aren't necessarily based on any science, fact, or measurement. That's what makes it difficult.
And that's one of the reasons, David, for everybody, I like some variation of the third recommendation.
Which is
because
more specific. And
it's more specific, it's measurable, and I think it addresses some of the concerns that we've all had over the last few years with respect to the subdivision of, slightly larger than normal lots into two small lots that is inconsistent with the streetscape, during in that immediate area.
Right.
And that applies all over the community, not just in the settlement community.
Yeah, I mean, and that third one could take out, designated conventional neighborhood and just say period, for proposed subdivisions, because it could apply also, instead of the more character type thing, it could apply to the settlement communities as well. So maybe that's more of a more overall, more measurable.
Yeah, some variation of that, I think, makes sense.
I mean, streetscape is a term that's used in the historic district. I don't know what type of legal grounds it has, but it's a term that's been used a long time.
Well, I mean, when you look at both for Mr. Pagliarini and Mr. Mitchell, that if you look at the first one, street and block design, does that cover sort of the proportion of, street frontage to depth of lot, or some of these things are kind of nebulous? I don't even really know what they mean.
Street and block is different.
I want to go back also, just in looking at this, again, there's a lot for us to review.
Even in the
what
existing?
What is the mission of the Planning Commission? It's not to design. It's not to serve as a architectural or design.
No.
And so we also, and again, this is all off the cuff. I'm not trying to ruin anyone's thoughts here. I'm just,
I understand.
My thought process is always, what are the counterpoints? And I think that's one we need to look at. We'd have to define those very carefully as to what those are.
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of this whole thing, and maybe if you can help us find a way to do that, is to really give us some way when, it may be that things look okay, generally speaking, but it just doesn't meet the surrounding area. It looks like a fish out of water.
I understand where
and
you
I know
want to get
fish out of
to,
water is
right.
not going to become in the code.
Right. Some consistency with neighborhood standards.
Right.
And what we have to do is square that with our zoning, lot sizes, all of those things, that go into that.
Right.
What is the threshold for adding additional layers of restriction?
Right.
And are those reasonable?
Right.
And are those going to be determined to be reasonable? And, how do we enforce them somewhat uniformly?
Right.
Which, is never, they're always difficult and unusual circumstances.
Well, I'm particularly worried about, the sketch plans, since they stop here and they don't go on to council and they don't get further vetting. So, I want to make sure that it's like the last line of defense is here. And I just want to have as many tools as we can so that, council members aren't then saying, how on earth could you have let this happen? So.
Are those sketch plans like enforceable when they leave here, or is it still massaged as they're going through
you've got to go to preliminary plat and then final plat.
Right.
But
that's at a
I would take
staff
some
level.
exception to the fact that there's no review after that. There is significant review after that. In fact, it used to be that all preliminary plats were heard by the Planning Commission.
But that was eliminated, and that was done at now to staff level, right? So yeah, that's what I mean is the last
Like we don't
place
know
that we see them as
we don't know
currently.
what it turns into after it leaves here.
Well, and the way the way this was all changed, we stop with the sketch plan, and then it becomes a staff decision after that. So that's what worries me. I just want to have as much flexibility and leeway within our commission, because we don't get another bite at it ourselves.
Yeah. The conditions that are placed on subdivisions, those are the conditions that we ensure that they're complete prior to it getting authorized by staff. So when they leave here, they don't have a necessarily approved 2 lots. They have to adhere to all the conditions that were placed on the subdivision, and then they get the authorization, which doesn't come back to y'all, but it goes to staff level, which I sign, and then they record it and the lots become 2. But I want to make sure that y'all understand that y'all are approving what actually does get approved once the conditions have been met. So there's no changing of the property lines.
If there was something
It's not
drastic,
It's not
they'd
like a
have to come
conceptual
back.
plan in a commercial setting where they can move buildings around as long as they don't, exceed the maximum number of units, let's say, or something.
Yeah, the sketch plan and the preliminary plat, I kind of look as the same thing.
Right.
Okay, if you're going to get approved by a sketch plan, then that is your preliminary plat once you move through whatever conditions that you're going to be adhered to.
Okay, so can we?
My recommendation, just because there's a
please.
lot, I'm sorry, my mind's
no, that's
moving on
okay.
all these right now.
Yeah.
Can
you take a look at these
We
after?
probably need to have a review session that we can bring back to you with fruitful comments.
Perfect.
And not speculation, because it's great discussion.
Yeah.
But I think we can have a better discussion
I agree.
when we have bullet points for you that are digestible and you can take action on. We don't need any further action tonight.
Yeah,
We can
no,
take all this
not
and
at
do
all.
what we need to do.
And if something like the number 2 is just kind of a non-starter, don't even bother coming back to us to explain all that. You could just come back to us with things you think are feasible, that are along the lines of the, the intention.
If you let me keep going, I'll fully depress you.
No,
by the time
I'm gonna
you leave,
say I'm gonna send all positive vibes at you, Mr. Pagliarini, to come up with some really creative
My wife
stuff.
says you see things coming 10 miles away, you poke holes in all of it. So,
I'm being the big picture
But we know
person.
the spirit.
The spirit, exactly. Right.
That's, we
You know,
want to make sure that the
measurables would be good, but
that
the
we're
spirit.
trying to do is legal based.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Understand.
That's
Yep.
basically.
Keep that spirit.
Granting a waiver has a little more
That's
teeth.
Good.
And I think the first one is what the author was trying to do, is define that character and protect that character. So
Yes.
anything that can be added to tighten that up is going to be a good thing
Yeah.
of protecting neighborhood
Um,
land development character.
Yep. That's great. And then the other ones, take a stab at them if there's any that can be suggested that you think would not only be legally defensible, even though we don't know what judges do, we know that, but yeah, I mean, I would just like to look for things like this is the beginning.
I think they know their charge, and we appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks. All right. Thank you so much. So we are adjourned.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for asking. He's doing well.